Hi, and welcome back to PDA UK. You'll see I'm in a different location this week. We are talking to the fantastic Emily, who we're going to talk about eating disorders on the autistic spectrum. So Emily is an awesomely autistic human being. We spoke with Emily before. You may recall we'd very early on in when I started this channel, we did a thing on her business where she makes this amazing jewelry and how hyper-focus really works for her. But something that Emily has experienced in her life is and had an eating disorder. The reason I wanted to tackle this was something that's happened recently is that my daughter is experiencing issues with eating and body image. Em herself has gone through these things, but also has a daughter who's on the spectrum and has ARFID. So we can sort of talk about both those things. The interesting thing is that obviously, like my daughter, Em's daughter is a PDA, most likely not diagnosed because, let's face it, who can get diagnosed in the UK? But basically, it meets all the criteria according to the PDA Society website. And so it's an interesting one to tackle because PDA combined with eating disorders or eating challenges is a whole new level of challenge. So I really appreciate you doing this because it's such an important subject. And I think it's one that people may not be aware. On the autistic spectrum, if somebody has a profile on the autistic spectrum, there is an increased chance or likelihood of having an eating disorder. Basically, what I mean is that the incidence of eating disorders within the autistic or neurodivergent community are considerably higher than they are in the neurotypical community, which makes sense when you think about it from the perspective of the brains operating differently and maybe processing the world differently. But rather than me try and just research and then relay something, I thought much better to go to the source. So there we are with them. So tell me a bit about what you went through, I guess.
So when I was a kid, never felt accepted at all for who I was. And growing up in secondary school, couldn't work out why I couldn't make friends or, why I wasn't accepted by any of my peers. And in the 90s, when I was growing up, there was a really, really strong message of you need to be skinny to fit in. Heroin chic was the top of fashion.
I remember now social media now. This is something, we were talking about on the Grumpy Kids on our last episode. It's something that is really becoming an issue because we were realising and the social media side of things. When you look at who is successful, they all fit a criteria. Not so much for boys, but I think it's actually becoming more and more prevalent with boys. I was interestingly talking to my daughter's school about her issues and how we can be supporting her. And something that they said was there seems to be a big thing on the boys at the moment, this whole Andrew Tate, toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
You have to look a certain way and treat women a certain way. And that's really becoming prevalent. And the way they talk to each other is what my daughter's picking up on. And she hears they're calling her fat, but they're not. They're actually calling each other fat.
Mm-hmm.
The example I use is Ryan Reynolds, because I love Ryan Reynolds. Legend of a guy, really funny, humble, I think, as a human being. But would he be as successful as he is right now if he didn't look like a demigod?
It's a uniform, isn't it?
Yeah, Danny DeVito's, very funny, really nice guy, very down to earth, but he doesn't profile in any way, shape or form. Social media seems to be really pushing this out, especially you got things like Mr. Beast, I guess, and Unspeakable, but they're guys. Even then, they're not hideously ugly. Unspeakable, ripped, is very athletic. But when you look at the women who are, we think the one I see particularly is one Collins Key, who do this channel. Whenever they have women on, they're all raped. They're all in bra tops and skinny pants or yoga pants and stuff like that. The message we're sending our kids is shocking at the moment.
Yeah, society puts a lot of pressure on, everyone, but particularly girls. But the thing is that doesn't ease off as you grow up. It really doesn't, because you're bombarded in social media that representation is getting better for different sizes, but you generally don't see anything other than the sort of standard acceptable model, as it were. So obviously if you're growing up with that as well, that this is giving you a really powerful message of your worth is tied to your size and how you do.
Yeah.
And that you will not be accepted into successful groups or do well unless you fit this profile. It goes beyond body size. It's also, how toned or athletic you are. It's also how you look facially, you know, what your skincare regime is, how much makeup you wear. It goes much deeper than your body weight. But obviously your size is something that is very easy to see, is really pressurized from all angles.
Going back to the 90s, you're heading into this, and like you say, the heroin she took was in, and I remember that so well because it was a gaunt, pale, really unhealthily skinned look. How did that affect you? What did you go through with that?
As I said, I found it really hard to fit in, and I sort of thought, oh, maybe I'm just not skinny enough. You know, that's what I need to do to be popular. You can look at all the popular girls; they're really skinny. You know, the way they dress, really tight clothes. Of course, it didn't work because, but then, you know, it was still this instilled belief in me from society that this is what I needed to do. I also grew up hearing my mum constantly degrading herself and complaining about her weight, always trying to lose some or restricting what she ate and making derogatory comments about herself all the time. So I internalized that.
Yeah.
You know? Once again, tying worth to size and body image.
It's a conversation I've been having with my, because obviously I'm a big guy and I've been working for years to try and lose weight, and it's gone up and down. I've lost a lot, but, you know, lockdown, we all remember lockdown. But yeah, put a bit back on and been trying to get that off. But because I'm dieting at home, she's picking up on that. And I'm trying to reflect to her at the moment is, look, I'm not doing it so I can look a certain way.
It's for health.
It's for my health, because I want to be there in 20 years when you're getting married and I want to live to see my grandkids and that kind of stuff. This is a health thing, and, you know, I've been diagnosed type 2 diabetic. There's issues with that. I need to get healthy. It's not about appearance for me, because realistically, it's not about appearance. This is about being healthy.
Yeah.
Anything else is a plain byproduct, I guess. She really internalized. I think she picks up on that. Like I say, she was hearing these guys at school talking to each other, calling each other fat. And again, like you say, internalizing. It's one of those things that I realized that I can tell my daughter how beautiful she is 1,000 times a day. It only takes that one comment from outside of that, and I might as well have said nothing.
Yeah. I think I heard somewhere that for every negative experience, you need 17 positive to cancel that out. Although I'm sure it may well be more than that. And also, if you're talking about neurodivergence with ADHD and autism, because we could struggle to move on from stuff and we'll hang on to it and go over and over.
So you had this internalization and this self-worth assessed based on your appearance.
Mm-hmm.
So that led into actually having an eating disorder.
Yeah, it is. So I restricted my food intake. I did try some Slimming World diets with my mum because she was on one, and I thought, well, I'd do that too. And I didn't really lose any weight, obviously, because I didn't really need to. I was perfectly healthy, but, you know.
Well, that's the body dysmorphic side.
Yes, which I still struggle with today. The thing is, if you have that, it never goes away. I think if you've ever had an eating disorder, I like to say that it's a bit like being a recovering alcoholic. It's always there in the background. You never sort of fully leave it behind.
You're recovering.
Yeah, but you're always recovering.
Yeah,
because you've always got that self-talk, inner critic that you've got to keep an eye on.
This is something I think is, why is this so much more prevalent within the neurodivergent community? And I think that's part of it. We've talked on this show before about the presence of voices. So my daughter hears voices. Funnily enough, on that video I spoke about talking to some friends about this, and Ed was one of the friends. He goes, "Oh yeah, they're quite normal. We get that."
Intrusive thoughts, really. Yeah, they have a lot to do with eating disorders, I think.
Because that is magnified within, I guess, the autistic brain, the neurodivergent brain, it becomes so much more of an issue to deal with. Because, so for those who don't understand, go check out the video. I'll put links to it in the description. But what happens is basically what is my internal monologue is often interpreted by a neurodivergent brain as being a separate voice. And it can be incredibly hard to ignore and to resist. It's not like I can tell myself, you're being an idiot. I had to learn a lot about self-talk. I've spoken about that before. In that, I can say, stop being stupid. You're not that person. Do this. You know, I can do. When you're dealing with another voice that's constantly on at you, it magnifies that intensity.
Yes, definitely. And intrusive thoughts are not you, and therefore that could be anything from societal standards. Some flippant comment a relative made at a gathering, something one of the boys at school said to someone else. It doesn't matter, but you already play it. And that's that inner critic that I think, especially with girls, really fluctuates your ability to deal with it, especially once you have a cycle, because your inner critic gets really loud towards the winter of your cycle, and it's really difficult to get into the habit of realizing that, of knowing that those voices get louder, and you'll be more harsh on yourself and more critical, which again can really affect body image. You get things like bloating and water retention stuff, which all happen with your cycle. This again contributes.
Some people are really experiencing because that's what's happening. And, comes towards, I like that, the winter of the cycle.
Yeah.
When it gets to that point, there's going to be bloating and water retention, and that's when she immediately looks and says, I'm fat, my tummy's too big. She's so hyper aware of it. And when the blessing is we've come onto this fairly early on and we're working with her. One of the things, interestingly, that she has a Thrive therapist in her school who is helping her through with this stuff. One of the things they've done is give the voice a name, if you like. So it's when they come up with this name, like Negative Nelly or something. It's not like that. It was a proper name.
I have a name for mine. It's called Paves, and it's a butler that has a tray. That has a tray of hors d'oeuvres, and do you thought about this? This one. I don't. Any hors d'oeuvres, thanks.
Switching back, you spoke with the fact the whole body dysmorphic side of things. People watching this are probably looking, thinking, she's so slim, what's the issue? But that's how body dysmorphia works, isn't it?
Especially with ADHD and hyperfocus. Because you zone in on different areas of your body and you think, that's not as toned as it was, or, why am I elastics digging in a bit more this week? And you might not necessarily make the connection of you had a takeaway last night and you're probably a bit bloated. Yeah. I also have a lot of intolerances, so if I slip up and have something by accident, that can really affect. And then she hasn't.
For Em, she not only has to deal with all that sort of stuff, her body itself rejects a lot of the foods that people would eat.
Yeah, I have quite a long list of intolerances, and it can affect. Which again, I'm so careful not to project any of that as anything other than like yourself for health reason, because my daughter will just pick up on that, and kids they copy.
They do, and they pick up on the smallest things, and I think it's true of any kid. We take neurodivergence out of the picture. It's any kid, they pick up on the vibes around the home.
So she sees me restricting and then thinks it's okay to restrict. However, she was already very restrictive.
Your daughter's being diagnosed with ARFID.
She's not had a diagnosis, okay, but it's almost definitely that.
Right. She's
always been picky, but it's really linked to the sensory issues. It's about the texture. So ARFID is avoidant restricted intake of food, only linked with autism, and it's to do with sensory processing disorder essentially. So it'll be to do with how the food makes you feel, how it feels in your mouth, the texture, the taste, the smell.
Sensory processing disorder discussed. I'll put links again in the description for it. It's really interesting. It's often like comorbidly, I hate the phrase. It's often co-diagnosed with people who are autistic. So if you get an autism diagnosis, often there are these other pairs that come along, and the frequent ones you'll hear about us, ADHD, PDA, and the sensory processing disorder is a huge one. Very, very common for autistic people to have a sensory processing disorder profile within being autistic as well. And what sensory processing does is basically the brain just misinterprets the signals it's getting.
Too strong or not strong enough.
What should be painful, you might see some people with extreme stimming where they could be wounding themselves because they're banging their head so hard that they're not feeling a pain sensation. For them, it's a pleasant experience.
Yeah.
Release. And so therefore, the best I can liken it to is actually leprosy. Leprosy is a disease which kills the nerves. The reason leprosy is so damaging is because you don't realize you're hurting yourself. The nerves start to die, and you pour boiling water in your hand, and you won't feel it. So people will not realize they're injured, and therefore not make the adaptations to heal. The sensory processing disorder kind of works the same way. It's not deadening of the nerves; it's a misinterpretation of the signal.
It could be the other way. It could be hypersensitivity as well. Yeah. Germany hypo or hyper.
That's it. And both can exist at the same time.
Uh-huh.
And it's so, but I'm pretty sure through my hand. Oh, that's annoying, isn't it? Paper cut. Oh,
and then the same with noises. Oh, it's too loud. I can't stand the sound of everyone talking at once and the washing machine and the thing. But then I'll go to a rave and a bit.
As a neurotypical, it could be so hard to sort of wrap my head around. It's not easier for someone to go through this. It's just they've got to live with it as well.
Quite often sit there going, why am I like this? I don't understand. I know why. There's reasons, but why?
Going back to the central processing disorder side of things, ARFID really does often come in there. I see it with my daughter, not at a level I would label her with ARFID, just because she does eat. She eats quite well. But we have gone through a lot with the sort of sensory, the textures and stuff like that. But I realised I do very similar.
Everyone's got preferences.
I mean, this is it. But it's like the flavour of vegetables. I kind of live with the belief that God buried vegetables for a reason. They're meant to be hidden and they're not supposed to be found. The truth is, obviously you've got to eat your veg. I love soups. I'll eat soups till cows come home. I love Italian food because it's in a sauce. It's all that. But the actual texture of most vegetables, I find really, it actually does give me a gag reflex in some situations.
So it's a texture thing rather than,
It truly is. That makes so much sense. So for your daughter, she's experiencing that. It's not that she doesn't like the food. It could be that she doesn't like the texture, but that turns into this avoidance.
Yes, very much so. So everything has to be very soft and easy to eat for her. Everyone who experiences ARFID symptoms will have different settings, as it were. Yeah, for her, everything has to be very soft and easy to eat. If it's hard to chew, if there's too much colour, potentially, fruit she's okay with. But we sort of, at the minute, things are quite tough at the moment, and we've sort of got 3 meals that she'll eat. Mealtime can sort of feel quite demanding for her as well, even though we work really hard to make it not. So then she will eat very little because she feels pressure to consume the food, despite the fact that we are trying really hard to not present it as demand.
As we said at the beginning of the interview, Emma's daughter most likely is a PDA, certainly fits the criteria that is laid out there. Like my daughter is a PDA. And when you bring in these complications with food to add to a PDA profile, so go and check out the stuff on exactly how PDA works. Again, links in the description. Basically, to control their anxiety, a person with PDA wants to control their situation so that they don't feel that anxiety. And that means avoiding demands at a pathological level. And that's the important thing. There's a thing called autistic demand avoidance, where this can come and go. And we all experience demand avoidance. So some description of, all that stuff, and we put it off. Things that are generally unpleasant. The difference is with things like PDA is something really cool can still be put off. I want to do this, but the demand itself creates an anxiety, and it can be crippling or it can lead to meltdowns. When you combine that with food avoidance, that's a real. How's that been for you guys?
Really tough, because obviously we want her to be able to be healthy and have everything she needs, but also we don't want to turn it into a battle, and it's a very fine balance. Quite often you'll say something and afterwards, shouldn't have said like that. And you hear you say upset and the words already come out and it's too late. I can tell that there's already some body dysmorphia coming in for her, although I do think that her food difficulties are more to do with ARFID at the moment. But, I'm scared for the future for her because, I struggled with it. I try so hard we don't talk about our bodies. They don't need to be talked about. We accept everyone exactly as they are.
How does that for you though? Because there's part of me that thinks ideal person to be raising somebody who's going to have these issues is somebody who's been through it and understands it from the inside. But I get the feeling as well from what you're saying, it adds a complication there because like you say, it never goes away. I guess it's triggering at some.
A little bit, although I've worked really hard on that. So yeah, there's like this, maybe there's this extra pressure because I've been through it and I know how hard it is. Yeah. But I'm also really aware of what I say.
Knowing what would have set you height of it.
In fact, yeah. So
when you were going through this yourself, what brought you through realisation that you needed support and help with this?
Well, at first it started off with food restricting and losing a lot of weight, getting really skinny. But then I started making myself throw up because I wanted to eat the food. I didn't have many ways to self-regulate myself. I didn't know I was neurodivergent. I didn't know what was wrong with me. Wrong. There wasn't anything wrong with it.
This is important to note as well. And is adult diagnosed, in fact. Like so many people that you will meet, often we see our kids and then you think, geez, that's a lot like me when I was a kid. And suddenly, you know, because his daughters we spoke to, you know, Alan, my best man back on the Grumpy Dads, he went through the ADHD diagnosis after seeing his nephew, who was almost identical to him when he was growing up. You didn't know that you were autistic at that point. You were still trying to find a world that you fit into, but you become aware this is now a trouble. Did somebody bring you to that point, or was it something you came to yourself?
My mum, really. I think I went to see a counsellor about it. That's all that really happened. I sort of got over it slowly, but then still the body image still struggled with every day. Didn't have so much of an effect in my 20s. I moved away from home and was at college. You know, my brain was busy doing all this amazing creative stuff and making friends and fitting in for the first time ever.
That point is, and that's a really common ways of finding your tribe.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, again, you're a typical here, but I didn't fit in at school. And when I left school, that was actually when I started making proper friends and realizing there's people like me out there. So finding people like you, and I'm guessing you mean by that other autistic people, or at least neurodivergent people.
I think some of them may have been in the group, yeah, but we didn't know. We were just weird. It was the similar in France, you know, it was the environment, it was the shared experiences. Yeah, later on, when I again became unhappy, I had a string of unhappy relationships, then, it comes back, you know?
So it really ties into...
When I wasn't feeling accepted.
I guess that makes perfect sense. I was just saying your emotional well-being, but actually that makes so much more sense. If you're not feeling accepted in your world as it is, then it's going to bring those demons to the surface again.
I recently said to my mum, and so to anyone who I'm close to and knows me well, that I really feel like every bad decision, choice, shitty situation I have found myself in has been as a direct result of not feeling accepted, whether that's school, family, friends, whatever.
We talk about autism acceptance. There's Autism Acceptance Day.
We need appreciation now, don't we?
This is a celebration.
Celebrate it, yeah.
There's so much out there that's something I've come to in my own life, you know, from being completely ignorant to this stuff to having a family that's neurodivergent, to actually coming to understand it, and making friends who are neurodivergent, actually becoming, we call it honorary autistic at times, and I kind of wear that with a badge of pride. But realistically, I find so much genuinely awesome stuff within the community and the people that are in that community. But it is this thing that we keep trying to smash, you know, star-shaped pegs into the diamond holes. It's not going to work. We keep trying to push neurodivergent people into a neurotypical world rather than trying to adjust the wider neurotypical world to be more accepting and understanding. It's not even tolerant, but just adapting to allow that to be, you know, we will talk about wanting a, you know, diverse community, but really disability and neurodivergence are the two things that miss that completely because they're just not on people's radar.
And especially if you can't tell immediately. You know, when you've not felt accepted, that makes you mask harder.
Wow, that's...
So then you get better at passing for just like everyone else.
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it? Because you go from, I don't feel accepted, therefore I mask. The masking causes more issues long term and more times of burnout, meltdown, shut down, whatever the particular coping mechanism is. And then that leads to an unacceptance, which leads again into masking harder.
Mm-hmm.
And that must be hell to be going through.
And seeing your kids go through it as well.
Yeah.
Despite your best efforts. You still can't stop it happening.
No, because they're going to experience the world as it is. We can bubble wrap as much as we like. In the end, the big bad world's out there and it has to be faced.
And I think eating disorders are part of masking, essentially.
I hadn't ever considered that.
Especially if it's body image related.
Like Warnicki's talking about, like she's openly talking about masking now, that she's aware she's doing it, that she feels like she's painting on a smile. Inside she feels like she's crumbling. but she has to smile when someone says, "How are you?" She had to say, "I'm okay, I'm good, thanks." And she is, for she to be honest, is, she's aware it's masking. But it's so interesting hearing that side of it, that if an eating disorder is a form of masking, or certainly in some instances,
And it is initiated through masking. Yeah.
that really makes sense. People will be watching this who have kids who are facing these issues, maybe facing it yourself. What would you recommend to do?
I think being really transparent, and I think also giving them permission to call you out, to say to you, that makes me uncomfortable.
That's a really important thing. I think I'm going to get you to expand on that a bit, because I think there's a thing there that, especially with demand avoidance, calling my daughter out is only going to push her.
Getting that feedback from them about what you're doing can help you to adapt to help them.
Something you said in there is you allowing permission. So sort of finding a way, if you're trying to deal with your kids who are facing this stuff, finding a way for them to give you that permission means that they have a sense of control in it, which would really work with the demand avoidance kind of thing.
Definitely. And then if they're giving you that feedback, you can adapt potentially and help them. I really think, just parenting as consciously as you can. Work on your own shit, man. Work on your perception. Then it helps them. It's, indirectly, if you're feeling triggered by this stuff, it's because there's something in you that needs work. It doesn't mean that you'll never feel your triggers. Once you've worked with it, it'll just be that, and you'll be able to respond instead of react. That would have really helped me to be able to say, don't comment on how skinny I am, or that I've put on weight, or just don't. It's, why does that matter? All it does is make me internalize it and try and process, well, what does that mean? Do I need to lose weight? Do I need to put on weight? Do I have to look a certain way for people to love me? So yeah, just let them call you out on that, and just be aware, they might not be able to call you out if they don't realise. So just be aware of what you're saying and the language you're using. Also, of what media you're consuming. If they've got things around them that are influencing how they feel about their body, perhaps look into that.
Interesting. That's something we've done is I've never been a big fan of things like Snapchat. I think should be banned outright. It's anti-parent and dreadful. But things like, Insta and TikTok and stuff like that, I've kept them off my daughter's phone. It's not being like, oh, you must not have this. It's just, it's not something I've put on a phone, and I can, Apple household, you can do with Android phones and stuff as well. You can block certain apps so that they can't be used. You've got YouTube, and a lot of the stuff from TikTok, thankfully YouTube's a lot more regulated, I guess, and then monitored, but it still comes through. And you've got this false image of what is actually accessible.
Yes. Women
should have a 25% body fat naturally, and yet what's being touted is this level of 5%. It's like, that's actually unhealthy.
It's really bad for you.
And I really want to thank you for this, for being so vulnerable and open about your own journey.
We only touched the very iceberg, but I hope it's useful.
That's it. I know. But really, to really get into this, we would be hours and hours and hours. And I think this is something that the idea of this is to highlight that there's an issue there, and what could be the next steps is what comes next, I guess. For that, I will put links in the description to charities and organisations that can help with ARFID, can help with body dysmorphia, anorexia and eating disorders. So that will be in the description. Also will be in the description is going to be a link to Anne's shop. Anne does phenomenal artwork, jewellery and mats and
handwares,
but they're just all based on nature. So we talked about in our previous interview the hyperfocus, and one of M's hyperfocus is finding these microchasms within nature and replicating them. It's amazing, amazing stuff, and I'll put links in the description to her online website and shop, and you can go and buy some.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode. Please do go ahead, like, hit subscribe, ring the bell so you do know when new content's coming up. I will see you again on the next episode, and in the meantime, please do stay safe.